Mike Liszewski. I'm a 3L here at UDC Law. I'm also on the board of directors for Students for Sensible Drug Policy. This conference is pretty unique in a sense we've got 3 board of director members here. Eric Sterling's on the board of directors, Alex Craig is on the board of directors, and we are also graced with the presence of Irene Alexander, who's the director of the board.
So it's 4.
Right. I meant speaking. Thank you for that. I'm not going to be talking about medical marijuana, but just as a brief way of introduction, I wanted to mention that marijuana is in fact a gateway drug. Before I came to law school, I was furious at the Barr Amendment. The Barr Amendment is what prevented DC from implementing our medical marijuana law, which we passed with nearly 7% of the vote in 1998. That fury is what drove me to become a law student, and so medical marijuana, or marijuana as it is, it's a gateway drug to a legal education. One of the co-founders of our law school, Edgar Kahn, wrote a book entitled No More Throwaway People. The book is about different subject matter than what I'm about to speak about, but I think it frames what I'm talking about very well. I'm talking about overdose and overdose victims. When supporters of the war on drugs speak of the necessity for it, they often say things like, we got to think of the children, and we're going to be sending the wrong message. Apparently, this message that we want to send is, if you witness an overdose, or if you suffer an overdose, you have 2.5 options. You can call for help and hope you get a good-hearted prosecutor. I think we have one here. You can watch your friends suffer and perhaps die. Or you can stick a 20 in their pocket, dump them in front of an ER, and hope for the best. And that often ends in an arrest as well. To combat this problem, 2 states and nearly 100 colleges and universities have implemented a response. This response protects the victims of drug overdose. It protects the people who call for help in these situations. It prevents them from being prosecuted. This sort of protection is known as Good Samaritan overdose immunity. I am going to talk initially, I'm going to offer a brief real-life example. Then I'm going to provide some background information on overdose and the problem that we suffer in this nation from overwhelming problem. Now I'm going to go through the development of Good Samaritan laws, Good Samaritan policies, beginning at the college level, and then we now have 2 states that have implemented laws. We had 2 others that came really close last year, and a handful of others that are still considering them in committee, and they're bubbling up. All right, so I'm going to read this story. It comes out of the Daily News from Columbia, Washington. Keslow man arrested following report of pregnant woman's overdose. A 911 call for heroin overdose early Thursday morning led to the arrest of a Kelso man for investigation of possessing drugs with the intent to sell them. The overdose victim, a 29-year-old Kelso woman who was also 6 months pregnant, was revived by paramedics and taken to St. John's Medical Center. Keslow police said. Dispatchers took the 911 call at 1:49 a.m. from the residence. Officers arrested Hancock, he was the man with possession of drugs, on suspicion of driving with a suspended license when he returned to the scene. Hancock claimed he saved the woman's life by telling someone to call 911 before he left. Hancock was arrested for having a meth pipe in his pocket. He had 6.1 grams of meth, 2 grams of heroin, and 3.7 grams of marijuana. Hancock claimed that these were the amounts of drugs he needed just to get started. That's his story. He was booked on suspicion of possessing of methamphetamine with intent to deliver, and as well with the heroin. He was set on $20,000 bond, and the police forwarded the case to the prosecutor's office. This happened back in December of this year. I'm not exactly sure where it's gone right now, but keep this story in mind as we go on with the discussion here on this topic. But someone asked the question, why are drugs illegal, which is really another way of saying, why do we have a war on drugs? Again, these answers come from places of we need to protect the children and we need to send the right message. This policy has placed us in a position where overdose deaths have overtaken deaths from motor vehicle accidents. In 2005, we had 22,448 overdose deaths. Compare that to homicides, that's only about 17,000 a year. The increase in overdose deaths has happened over about a 3-decade period. Between 1980 and 1999, there was a 400% increase in overdose. Between 1999 and 2005, it increased another full 100%. So in just 2.5 decades, we had about an 8-fold increase in the number of overdose deaths in this country. Something that should be noted, 1980, when this increase really first started, that is when Phase 3 of the war on drugs kicked into action. I like to think of Phase 1 being Harry Ensinger when he began in the 1930s, Richard Nixon Stage 2, and Ronald Reagan Stage 3. So we are in the middle of Stage 3. The drug war, hopefully, is drawing to a close. The problem with these statistics of overdose reporting is overdose is likely to be underreported. And there's also inconsistent record keeping. It's hard to tell whether or not an overdose is a suicide. It's hard to tell sometimes if an overdose occurred. If someone had an overdose and thankfully made it through it alive, what's the likelihood that they're going to go and tell a doctor that they were a public service person, a counselor, that they almost died committing an illegal act? So the statistics are likely underreported. But one thing that we do know is with these reported statistics, overdose has become the #1 injury-related killer of Americans between the ages of 35 and 54. Now, perhaps if you think these people are a little bit older and wiser and should know how to handle themselves better, overdose is now the second leading cause of injury-related death for those between 15 and 34. What can be done about this problem? Well, I'm here to talk about Good Samaritan laws, but there's a couple other steps that can be done. One is this amazing medication called naloxone. It is to overdose what bare aspirin is to headaches. It is the wonder drug that works wonders. If someone is suffering an overdose and they are administered naloxone properly, they have a substantially increased chances of surviving that homicide. Several U.S. cities have implemented programs like this. Baltimore and Chicago, most notably, they've seen reductions in their overdose rates as access to naloxone has increased. Another thing that can be done from a policy perspective is overdose prevention programs. These train the at-risk population in ways of how they can save each other's lives, whether it's through the naloxone administration, CPR, and it also makes them aware of the Good Samaritan laws. Good Samaritan laws offer immunity from prosecution, not arrest. Police often complain with drug policy reforms. They don't want a blurred line. Is marijuana going to be legal, but the heroin's illegal? I don't know how to arrest this. Good Sam laws take that out of the equation. It's protection from prosecution. Police are free to do their jobs the way that they've always done their jobs. Good Samaritan laws first started emerging in the U.S. on college campuses back in the mid-1990s. On the college level, they are often referred to as medical amnesty programs. Slowly but steadily, the number has increased to about 100. Most recently, the University of Maryland passed one of these bills. We have two of the people who were very instrumental in this happening, Irene Alexander and Stacia Cosner, are both here. 2006, there was a study conducted at Cornell University. And this has been the only real in-depth study on medical amnesty programs that's been conducted thus far. Before Cornell introduced a medical amnesty program in the fall of 2002, only 19% of students would even consider calling for help, and only 4% actually did call for help. Calling for help in this instance is a little nebulous because the study does not define calling for help as calling 911. It's possible they may have called a friend, it's possible they may have called a counselor that they trust, so these aren't necessarily 911 calls. But only 4% actually called for help in this situation. So, the main reason people didn't call, there were two top reasons. They didn't want to get in trouble, and they didn't think the person who was suffering needed medical attention. Those two things speak to the problem here. We need immunity from protection, from getting in trouble, and on top of that, we need education. Something else that the Cornell Medical Amnesty Program did, this is some of the brilliance of their program, was it got those who had had alcohol incidents into a psychoeducational intervention. Previously at Cornell, before the program, if you were involved in an alcohol overdose and the police came, helped you to the hospital, you were compelled, you were given it wasn't a court order, but it was a campus judicial order to attend this psychoeducational intervention. Only 2%, only 22% went to these, and those were the 22% who went because of police assistance. After Cornell introduced this program, that number went up to 52%. So not only are we going to have more people likely to seek medical attention while they're in the midst of an overdose, while they're in the physical throes of death, they're also going to get the aftercare, the important things. If someone's got a problem, if someone nearly overdoses on alcohol, they may have an alcohol problem. And so there's some real benefit here that this is putting people into the treatment system, but not in a punitive way. And the increase was accomplished voluntarily. These people were not forced to go there. They weren't going to get kicked off campus. You had essentially a 150% increase in the number of people who went and got help after alcohol. What sorts of protections did the Cornell program offer? It offered protection to the victim. It offered protection to the caller as long as they were operating in good faith. But it also placed an obligation on organizations hosting events. If a fraternity or school club was hosting an event and someone had too much to drink, a representative from that organization now has to call and make the phone call, or at least has to make a phone call. If not, it becomes an aggravated circumstance should greater sanctions come about. The takeaway from this, before I get to the takeaway, there's one thing about the Cornell study that if you're a drug policy reformer, you're very tempted to cite as a great fact, but I believe it's really a misinterpretation. The study said that the number of people who were afraid to call 911 fell by 50%. This gets misinterpreted frequently as twice as many people will call for help. I think it does reformers a disservice to sell this more than what it really is. Statistically, you can kind of maybe say it's not untruthful, but I don't think it's really accurate. I think the benefits of this program don't need to be oversold. The takeaway is these programs work. The call rates went up, and the quality of 911 intervention went up. More students entered into the psychoeducational intervention on a voluntary basis. These programs have inspired the states at some level. New Mexico became the first state in the country to pass Good Samaritan law in 2007. New Mexico has a comparable overdose rate to the district. Their overdose rate when they passed the law was 7 and 7.5 per 100,000. New Mexico passed their 911 Good Samaritan bill, SB 200, 2007, and this protection extends to both the victims and the helpers who call for help and act in good faith. It does not provide immunity to disorderly conduct. They took that out from some of these college models. However, it does include a provision that says if you help someone in an overdose situation, you may receive immunity from crimes other than possession. These Good Samaritan laws are limited to the arena of possession. Let's say you had a distribution level amount, like the gentleman from Washington State. It gives prosecutors, well, not prosecutors, it gives the judge some discretion. It legislatively instructs the judge that you are to use a Good Samaritan instance as a reason for reducing penalties even below the suggested mandatory, not mandatory, the suggested minimums. It's a little too soon to get really excited about what happened in New Mexico because the data is slowly trickling in. It's mostly anecdotal stories. When New Mexico passed the law in 2007, they also passed some other laws that helped people in overdose populations. They increased their access to treatment. This brought more people with addiction into the social service arena rather than the criminal justice arena. And the reporting of the counselors is they've heard many people in the population, they are more likely to call for help. They are aware of the program and they are willing to use it if they're in that situation. There's been some other states that have 10-minute done and then talk about Washington State, which did pass their law back in 2010. First two states, California and New York, their laws are very, very similar to the New Mexico law. About the only difference is that they added paraphernalia to possession as protection. Both bills died. One can only speculate, and that's what I've done. There is, in New York, there was a very strong medical coalition that had formed and had signed on to this petition, but an action letter hoping to get the state legislature to pass this bill. It was all social justice organizations. It was all, other than some of the medical groups, it was all the usual suspects for drug policy reform. It wasn't exactly the broadest of coalitions, at least in terms of bringing in outside groups. That bill died in committee. In California, they got a little bit closer. It passed the House and it passed the Senate with some pretty strong numbers. But it too lacked the broad support that I feel is necessary. And Governor Schwarzenegger vetoed this law. He sent this explanation back to the California State Assembly. I am returning Assembly Bill 2460 without my signature. While I appreciate the author's intent behind the bill, I am troubled by that this bill essentially seeks to eliminate the penalty for an illegal act with an illegal substance. 2 days later, Governor Schwarzenegger decriminalized marijuana. A little bit of irony there. To be fair to Governor Schwarzenegger, does make a distinction in his statement later on, saying that high-risk drug use and behavior is what he's concerned about. And if you know Governor Schwarzenegger, he's been, if not supportive, at least sympathetic to marijuana legalization over the years. And I don't want to make it too hard on this, even though I think he went the wrong direction here. So, what did Washington State do so different that these other states just didn't manage to do? Washington State's law is remarkably comprehensive. It includes increased access to naloxone, but it also defines specific situations, both that would provide guidance for when a sentence should be below the suggested minimum, but it also provided more clarity as to what are aggravating circumstances, such as overdoses when there's children around, domestic violence, those sorts of things. So it's a really very holistic law. What I think was the missing ingredient that California and New York lacked was the coalition of support. Now in Washington, you have the Washington Department of Public Health, University of Washington Alcohol and Drug Abuse Institute, Washington Poison Center, the Science and Management of Addiction, and the ACLU of Washington. You're probably thinking, yeah, sure, that's all the other groups that probably were involved in other states. But here's the difference. In Washington, they had the Attorney General of Washington on board. This is very key. When passing drug policy reform, I don't want to draw too many parallels to medical marijuana, but through the school I was fortunate enough to, through the legislation clinic, I was in the DC Council when the medical marijuana bill passed. And things were going really good with that law. It was looking much better than it turned out until the Attorney General voiced concerns. And then things started peeling back. The group in Washington State was very savvy for however they were able to get the Attorney General of Washington on board. I think that was the key difference. I think that's what got Washington the law that they have today, and it's really one of those things that, from a policy perspective, it shouldn't go anywhere. What's the situation look like in DC? As we've talked about, the overdose rate here in the district is about 18 per 100,000, pretty similar to New Mexico. But DC has a different problem. Overdose nationwide typically involves the drugs that Ken was talking about. They are the prevailing drugs with overdose in this country. When you saw that increase from 1999 to 2005, that was when the prescription drugs really started to take over the overdose world. In the district, we have something a little bit different. Here, cocaine is the primary drug that causes overdose. Also, the typical overdose sufferer in the district is a little bit older. The majority of overdose deaths have occurred in the 51 to 60 range, as well as the 41 to 50 range. It attacks a slightly older population here. You can speculate as to why that is. My suspicion is a cocaine user who is that age. Their heart just stops working at a certain point. But whatever the reason is, that's what we have here in the district. That does raise some cause for concern. These bills that have worked in these other states, the prescription medication, overdoses, they can be remedied by naloxone. But does that work on cocaine too? And the answer is yes, it does. There is evidence for that. Naloxone is the wonder drug with overdoses. So, in terms of recommendations, I believe there's really a demonstrated need for Good Samaritan laws across the country. The National Conference of Mayors agrees. In 2008, they passed a resolution strongly calling for the adoption of Good Samaritan amnesty laws. Components of Good Samaritan, the quality Good Samaritan law are protection for the user, protection for the caller, from possession, paraphernalia, and if you really want to be good, disorderly conduct. Placing obligations on organizations that hold events is something to consider, but that probably makes more sense on the college level. That sort of thing, it's probably more tricky when you get into the private world. In terms of passing these laws, the recommendation is to build broad-based coalition support. If you only have the medical community on your side, you may not have a friendly prosecutorial office, and your Attorney General may not be too kind to these laws. Something else that needs to be done is the accurate reporting of statistics, both by advocates and by the government. I don't think the government is trying to underplay the statistical foibles that exist with overdose, but government can better fund their social service agencies that keep track of these records, as right now they do not receive any funding. Another recommendation, and this deals with treatment, this is somewhat outside the arena of overdose protection, but I think it's related. We need to stop sentencing marijuana offenders to treatment. This is not an argument based on freeing marijuana offenders. Rather, it's about the effectiveness of rehab. If you sentence someone to rehab, chances are it's not going to be very effective. Someone who goes to rehab through sentencing, they're not going there of their own will, and it's not very likely to stay. Furthermore, most people who are arrested for marijuana don't believe they have an addiction. Whether they do or not is largely irrelevant. And so what this is wasted treatment space. This space should be reserved for people who have problems with cocaine, heroin, and prescription opioid medications, those sorts of things. If we have more treatment beds and spaces available, I believe that the problems with overdose will, in the long term, be remedied, because if we can funnel people into the social services network instead of the criminal justice network, and we can get them to want to go to treatment, then the treatment will actually work. And so it's a real, there's no direct connections, it's part of this whole greater fabric of the drug war. After all, war on drugs is about saving lives, so I would say the best strategy would be to declare peace, and that's the only way we will achieve victory. Thank you. Questions?
Mike, we were talking a lot about this whole medical amnesty law. In aviation, which I have a lot more experience in, there's a unique kind of system for when someone screws the pooch very badly. You can call a phone number over at NASA and report an incident worthy of investigation, and NASA can take jurisdiction over it, and they write it up as a technical memo for how it got screwed up and how this very bad thing almost occurred or did occur. But if someone else calls the FAA before you call NASA, then the FAA shows up with guns and badges and takes your license. So there's this very big incentive of, well, if I call NASA, I get an embarrassing technical memo written about me. But I should do it fast, because if someone else saw what happened and they called the FAA, I could lose my license. And so it's a thing of, if there was nobody around when it occurred, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning and you were off controlled airspace, well, you could probably get away with whatever occurred. But if it was kind of, like 7 in the afternoon at a medium-sized airport, maybe I should call the number. And if it's at a bigger airport and you screw the pooch, well, you're dialing them before the parts are finished coming off your airplane. It's literally, you have to be in a race to rat yourself out to the nice cops before someone else rats you out to the bad cops. And it works very well.
Are you finished, sir?
Okay.
I answered your question before, but put you on the spot again. Okay. Primarily, when we are in their medicine camp, they're thrown into a ball, everybody start
Virginia, where they nod off and they go to sleep and down in their sleep. I would say that probably the best thing for that would be increased public education to know the warning signs of overdose. And it's not just public education to the general public. This public education has to go to the affected populations. It's no good to train someone who's never going to be around in a drug overdose. It's no good. It's of little benefit to train someone who is never going to be around a drug overdose, or likely never to be around a drug overdose, how to revive someone. On the other hand, if you are a frequent user or even an attendee of such an event, then yeah, you're the population that would really benefit from that. So the key is to be able to have social services that can educate those populations. Yeah?
My question is for Mr. Lammers. Have you tried in Wise County any sort of like more comprehensive treatment approaches, or have you supported more like a community-based response to the problem you have, just as alternatives to criminal punishment?
Well, I mean, we've tried various things. And the Suboxone problem, pointing out, you pronounced me, the Suboxone subject came out of attempts to find a way that we could get something that would keep people from withdrawing from opioids, pain pills, and keep their cravings from happening. And like I said, of course, then people started using that and found out they could use it. We're trying to get a drug court going in our county. Those are always kind of touchy issues. There's a fair number of people who don't believe in them. Because while I think drug courts work well, they look goofy as all get out. You're from somebody outside watching. So it's hard to convince some people to get behind that. The problem, of course, is like I said earlier, a lot of times, by the time there has to be something where the community affected before it gets to us to really make a serious change. It's all well and good to point at the prosecutor and law enforcement and say they're the problem and they may be part of it. But the reality is that most of the time, by the time they get to me, I'd say 80% of them, I'm not really going to make them on. They're already lost. And I hate to say that, but then, and this is always going to be an excuse you're going to hear from every, a reason you're going to hear from every prosecutor is after it's the point where I can't help the first, well, my first duty is to protect the people of the county and, help that person who's being charged if I can. If I can't help that person, I'm going to protect the people of the county. And the only tool I have for that is jail and prison. And to get a treatment program in Virginia prisons, there's a three-year-long treatment program in the prisons. Okay, you can get NA and AA and that sort of thing in different jails, but actual treatment program is a 3-year treatment program at the Department of Corrections. Somebody has to be sentenced to longer than 3 years, and I'm here to tell you that I think you have to get caught. I don't know how many times you have to get caught before you actually get a sentence that's over 3 years in Virginia. So that's not really something that, you don't walk up to many people and go, well, I can give you a year in jail, or we can give you 3.5 years so you got time to do the process and get into this treatment program. They aren't going to take that. The primary concern of most defendants is not going to jail or getting out as quick as they can. So it's kind of that's the situation we're in.
Correct.
think it's still a development area. I had that case, and then it sort of died out because nobody wanted to stay law. I mean, they lost, so they didn't. It's sort of a lot. But I think it's probably going to come back up now that the political shift. There's more willingness to go after maybe not only in housing but also welfare, food stamps, all of this program that you want to see, you have to be stuck at. But it's still mostly for
Any consideration that DNA testing might be next?
good question. I'm not sure about that, but it's true. Anything possible, I guess. I think that the one in Kentucky was very severe. Texas, I think, had a good travel program. So anything possible. Who knows? As I was saying before, in my last comment, we probably at some point might start challenging something.
I just wanted to mention too that Maryland's Good Samaritan law passed, except it was 3 pages long and they scratched out every single part of it except for the last line, which says that it can be used, the fact that you call for help or drug overdose can be used as a mitigating factor, whatever that means, whatever that means. But we had a coalition lined up. We had Judge Burnett here spoke, testified. I testified, read a bunch of stories from students. We had Dr. Derek from his son overdose right on this, but then 2 members of law enforcement came out and testified, and everything was scratched out. So I guess if I was going to make a question out of this, how would we get law enforcement on our side?
I don't know how we get law enforcement on our side, but beyond Washington State's Attorney's Office, they also had the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs on board. Their executive director, Don Pierce, his line on the Washington law was what it came down to us is that if it can save a few lives, it's worth it. So perhaps that's the message that can bring in law enforcement in our less friendly forces. Any other questions? Thank you very much.